find and recode feature in Xero is, for me as an accountant, for my team, is one of the best and very much unique feature in Xero. Why I say unique? Because I have yet to see this feature in other accounting system. I'm not very sure if this exists, but as far as my knowledge today, this exists only in Xero now. So I think we'll start with our learning objective on this. So we have 5 learning objectives in our discussion today. One is we need to demonstrate to you how we will actually use find and recode, the process, and then we also discuss the limitations, and then some common causes of errors, and then finally some tips and notes that we can share with the attendees. So find and recode, these are the 4 common usage of find and recode. So like any other software, it has a search function, right? So you can search the contact, like in the case of Xero, for example, right? Xero would have a search feature actually here, where you can search per contacts, and even on modules, you will have some search features as well on different modules. So like example here in invoices, you can actually make searches, filters here. The same is true with your bank accounts. Will always also give you a search features as well, right? So in the bank accounts, you will have search features here. Also, your contact module would also give you search features as well, right? Okay. But before find and recode, when you try to search something and find something in Xero, you need to go through all these modules separately. Now, thanks to Xero, and thanks to the people of Xero who are always several steps ahead of everybody, even to the accountants, they have come up with a feature called find and recode. So find and recode is an advanced feature in Xero that is only available for all advisor users. So you might be wondering why I cannot see this in my Xero. It's most probably because you are not in an advisor role. So advisor roles normally are the owners of the subscriber owners, or whether you are a high-level user of Xero in your organization. Okay, so then you would be an advisor, and the advisor use find and recode. And find and recode is very much useful, but at the same time, it's also create risk in your books, because if you are not doing it properly and you don't have proper control on how to use this in your organization, it will create a lot of issues of misclassification on your books. So make sure that if you have someone in your organization who is doing this particular method in Xero, that person must have the right authority to make reclassification, corrections, or adjustments in your Xero. Otherwise, don't use this system if you are not very sure of your control or who is the delegated authority on making such adjustment. So, right, so uses of Xero, we can actually use Xero in 4 ways. No, one is we can use Xero for bulk searches. We can use Xero for fast recoding. When I say fast recoding, find and recode feature in Xero is, for me as an accountant, for my team, is one of the best and very much unique feature in Xero. Why I say unique? Because I have yet to see this feature in other accounting system. I'm not very sure if this exists, but as far as my knowledge today, this exists only in Xero now. So I think we'll start with our learning objective on this. So we have 5 learning objectives in our discussion today. One is we need to demonstrate to you how we will actually use find and recode, the process, and then we also discuss the limitations, and then some common causes of errors, and then finally some tips and notes that we can share with the attendees. So find and recode, these are the 4 common usage of find and recode. So like any other software, it has a search function, right? So you can search the contact, like in the case of Xero, for example, right? Xero would have a search feature actually here, where you can search per contacts, and even on modules, you will have some search features as well on different modules. So like example here in invoices, you can actually make searches, filters here. The same is true with your bank accounts. will always also give you a search features as well, right? So in the bank accounts, you will have search features here. Also, your contact module would also give you search features as well, right? Okay. But before Find and Recode, when you try to search something and find something in Xero, you need to go through all these modules separately. Now, thanks to Xero and thanks to the people of Xero who are always several steps ahead of everybody, even to the accountants, they have come up with a feature called Find and Recode. So Find and Recode is an advanced feature in Xero that is only available for all advisor users. So you might be wondering why I cannot see this in my Xero. It's most probably because you are not in an advisor role. So advisor roles normally are the owners of the subscriber owners, or whether you are a high-level user of Xero in your organization. Okay, so then you would be an advisor, and the advisor use Find and Recode. And Find and Recode is very much useful, but at the same time, it's also create risk in your books. Because if you are not doing it properly and you don't have proper control on how to use this in your organization, it will create a lot of issues of misclassification on your books. So make sure that if you have someone in your organization who is doing this particular method in Xero, that person must have the right authority to make reclassification, corrections, or adjustments in your Xero. Otherwise, don't use this system if you are not very sure of your control or who is the delegated authority on making such adjustment. So, right, so uses of Xero, we can actually use Xero in 4 ways. No, one is we can use Xero for bulk searches. We can use Xero for fast recoding. When I say fast recoding, meaning you have a volume of transaction with same criteria, for example, of accounts, meaning let's say you're using an account called subscription, but then you would want to really record this bulk transaction as a prepaid account. So then instead of going one by one on this account or this transaction, select the file, then edit, and then another file. So what happens if you have more than 100 lines? So then you have to open one by one each of these transactions. It will take your time. But with Find and Recode, you can bulkly recode the account at one time very efficiently. Also, bulk adjustments and the bulk correction of accounts, or correcting the name of the contacts, or in the case of adjustment, correcting also the tax, maybe tax type, or correcting the accounts itself. Okay, so we can find this under accounting module menu, and then below your advanced list. Okay, so let's touch on the features now. So the first feature would be searching and finding. So Xero, let's go to Xero now. Here, let's go to Find and Recode. So once you go to Find and Recode, your dashboard here would actually show you the history of the Find and Recode transactions you've done in the past. So here, since I'm doing this the first time on this Xero organization, you don't see anything. But you would see here what was the date you made that particular Find and Recode transaction, and then who approves it, what is the transaction date, the range, and what is the status. Now, if you want to go ahead, just click Find and Recode button, and then this brings you to this window where you will see you're being faced to ask of how you would want to match it and what are the conditions. So there are 2 things here. The first one is, how do you want your Find and Recode? Is it all the conditions applicable to all, or is it only any of your conditions will apply? Now, in Find and Recode, you can search based on these particular conditions. Okay, so you have a type, a status, accounts, bank, date, reconciled between, transaction total, tax rate, entered contact, invoice, or your tracking. So these are your search criteria. So if I go here, particularly, for example, on an account, you would have a search, a positive, meaning you have to select the account to search the account, particular account, is or is not, which is a negative, meaning bring me all the accounts in this search except this account. So there's a positive search, there's a negative search. Next would be You have a filtering, so that I discussed already. You can filter your search according to this. Yeah, type, status, account, bank account. You can search by date. You can search reconciliation between dates. You can also search by amount. You can define the currency as well. You can search by tax rate. You can search by the person who entered this transaction. You can also search by the contact of the transaction. You can also search by the invoice number or reference of that transaction and the tracking category. So in my example, in the demo here, I'm using a location or region as my tracking. I will get to that one by one later. Another feature also is after you make a search, you can only recode for information. One is you can change the contacts of your transaction, meaning it's the payee or the payer, for example, or your supplier or your customer, your employee, all that. So if you have mistakenly recorded transaction in one name and then you need to change that, then you can change that name to a new name. Another would be reclassifying accounts. So if you feel you need to correct the account, okay, you can record the bulk transaction of the account, okay, to another account. 3 is the tax type. We're talking about sales tax, normally sales tax or VAT or GST, depending on the country where you are. Okay, so if there's an error or you need to recode or change tax, you can also change tax. And then finally, tracking. So these are the only 4 information you can change using a find and recode. Okay, once you made a search and then filter, okay, you can sort the data that was displayed based on your search. You can sort highest to lowest value or vice versa, or old to new dates and vice versa. Methods would be once you have filtered and then you're ready to recode, you can recode in 2 methods. You can record at source transaction, meaning if the item that you have searched and filtered is an invoice, the recoding is done to the invoice itself. However, you can also make a recode using a manual journal. And normally this is done, for example, when you have an audit adjustment. You don't want to touch the original transaction entry, but instead make a manual journal for your audit adjustment. So then, after you find and search all these transactions that need to be recoded or adjusted, you can select Recode with manual journal, meaning it will create a manual journal adjustment and it will not edit or change the original transaction. So if you're changing, for example, a supplier invoice, okay, when you're selecting manual journal, it will not edit that supplier invoice, but it will create a manual journal reversing whatever is the account that you're creating. Okay, so let's go to that features one by one now in our system. So like I said, you can find lines either for each condition you will apply as all condition altogether, or you allow Xero to find the condition as long as it's present to whatever condition. Okay, now your conditions, like I said, this is the list. You can have a single search condition, or you can have as many search condition. Okay, and then you can select which one is positive, negative search, or then you can search also by type, right? So I'll display everything here so that we would be able to see how we can apply all this individually. Contact. Did I miss anything? No, everything is there, right? So you can make a search or filter all together with all these conditions or some of these conditions. So for type, it will tell us what is the type of source transactions you created for this. So are you going to search only limited to sales invoice? Or you would want to search also for everything? Bill, credit note, okay? Will this search apply to this? So that's the question you would want to know. So you can have multiple type. Okay, you can do that. And then status, again, negative and positives. The status would be either, is it a draft, waiting for approval, waiting for payment, and or paid. So maybe you would want to say, I want to see all of the types of the status of all my type. Or you can, I just wanted to see the one that is waiting for approval, right? Or I would say, I just need to see only paid and already approved, right? I can do that. Bank account, right? Again, it's also a negative and positive search. It will tell you you would be limited to search only for bank transactions. So if you have 2 bank transactions, the 2 bank accounts will show up. So you can limit or you can show everything. So let's say in my case, I would do business transaction. Tax rules, which is your sales tax, for example. So then you would select which is the most applicable sales tax or VAT or GST that is applicable for you. So maybe you would want to select all, then there's no need to filter. But if you are selecting for some of them, right? Let's say sales. Let's do all only search. Right? And then the dates. So the date would be in between, exact date, or exact date before this date, or several dates before this date, or several dates within this date. So if it is, and it's a very specific date, if we are saying before, we're saying any dates before this date and after, meaning dates after that. And then in between, you would see the range of date that you need to provide. Then reconciliation between, we're talking about reconciliation on what period of reconciliation in your bank, for example. So then again, you just select which is the range of date that you would want. Now, this is not very popular really, but this particular condition, it's here if you want to use it. Then the person who are the users of your transaction, right? So you can also filter who use it, who created the transaction. Contact is the contact. It will not show you a drop down, but it will tell you about whatever is available, right? By search. But unlike other filtering, there's a drop down immediately. But here, no, you have to type the name. Now, for contact, you're only limited to one particular contact, I think. You cannot do several contacts, right? Unlike here, you can do multiple filters. Here, you can only search one contact at a time. Invoice number, also one number at a time. And then here, your complete filter as to how many locations you would want if you are using tracking for your location, as this is my case now, right? So what I'm saying here, you can apply all these conditions all together. Now, you have to make note that this search button here, for your search to be valid, it must be blue. No, it's clickable. Now it's ghosted, so therefore your search is not valid, right? So this is also common. Will create a common error also for you. So what is recommended, while you can actually do this in Xero, but what is recommended is you can do a search or filter at least 1 or 3 conditions. Okay, putting more, it gives you more difficulty on the search. So let's say here, so now see the search button is showing, meaning there's data already inside it. So I can click that. So now I've done my search condition and then creating my filter, okay? Then nothing is showing for me, meaning this condition did not give me any data. So what about, I will remove this, I will remove this, remove this, remove this, and I'll just say, I want to see, based on my type, I want to search based on my type related to my sales invoice, bills, and manual journal, no? And spend money and receive money, right? And then I want to see a particular account. Okay, so maybe I want to see sales. Okay, and then I wanted to see, yeah, let's do sales. And then let's say, maybe I have this here. Okay, so as you see now, based on the filter, based on the search and filter conditions, the data will show up here. It's saying there are 37 items matching to my filter. Okay, so up to this level, what you're doing is just basically searching. So you try to find, maybe you find something here, this is what you're looking for, and then you can just click that line, it brings you to that transaction. So that's the first usefulness of this find and recode, is the searching. No? Now, for me, I do not use find and recode just for searching. I do this for recoding, adjustment, and correction. Okay. Again, whatever will show here would depend on your criteria of your conditions and searching. Now, another feature is that once you have searched, you can actually, sort this into date. So this one, when you're seeing us here, the latest is on the top. If you're pointing it up, the oldest is in the top. You can also filter by alphabetical. Again, all this. So all of these columns can be filtered except for description. Okay, so that you cannot do. Okay. Now, if you're doing find and recode because you would want to bulk correct, let's say, so maybe what I would want to do is that I have certain transaction. Let me just open my profit and loss so that I can make I'll try to test what I can. So now what we can do, let's do a demo on how we can reclassify accounts or tax rate based on find and recode, using find and recode. No? So here we have some transactions in rent, okay? And we have also some transactions for entertainment, for example. So let's say I open this and I said, oh, this entertainment entry, this is not correct. I don't like to use entertainment account. So this is actually, we will use this as, let's say, just for our purposes, it's actually office expenses, no? So instead of going here and opening one by one, okay, one by one, opening all this window and then editing this, I mean, that's fine, right? That's fine. You can edit, obviously. You can edit this transaction. It's fine. If you have 2, 3 lines that you can manage. But what about if you have, let's say, after a year, you realize that all this time you have been accounting for a wrong account. And then you notice now you have like 600 lines to correct. Do you still do that method of going one by one and opening? No. So this is why accountants are very happy on this, especially for accountants who commit a lot of errors. I hope you are not one of them. But if there's errors and there's a lot to bulk edit, instead of doing 600, opening 600 windows at a time and then editing the account to, let's say, office equipment, office expense, that would be very tiring and it's time consuming. And this is why find and recode is a very nice feature for us. So what I would do is I just go to my find and recode, and then I just have to find, what was my transaction here? Entertainment, right? Okay, I'll search all my entertainment. Okay, all my entertainment transactions now will show up here. Now, you would notice here also this column, it will show the type of transaction. So this is a spend money transaction. This is a bill method because this is a accounts payable. Spend money from the bank. So anything about this account will display here. Now, if, for example, I would say this should not be entertainment, but office expense, and instead of opening one by one and editing, then you can use this. I take everything, or you can take only, select only those you want to correct, not all. Okay. So in our example, I want to recode everything. I just click recode here. And then you can select what do you want to correct for this? Am I correcting the name of the contact? Or am I correcting or changing the name of the account? Or the tax rate? So in this case, I would say I want to change this. So like, for example, here, region, there's nothing in the region here. The accountant did not track this properly on the right location. Like I said, maybe this account, this is for the location in the north, right? So I click that review. It will categorize for me that these 2 transactions are for the north. Okay, now it adds to our history that I have created this transaction. Now I can go back to that by clicking this search here. Yeah, so I'll click that search again. You would notice now there was already the locations is already filled up. So then maybe I would want also the rest to be for south, for example. So this is an example that you can add. Otherwise, you cannot add anything except only for your tracking. So here, we've added that. Again, search. You've added now the region. Okay. Now, let's go to my earlier issue. I wanted to change entertainment to office supply. It's either I can do this by clicking here, or I can just select all for items if it is more than 200 lines. But let's say I'll do Recode here, and then all I want that this, instead from office entertainment, it should be office expenses. So then I do that, confirm that. So once I do that here, if it's done, I can open again and check. So normally what I would do after I do a recoding on my transaction, I immediately, once it's done, I go back to that search button so that I can check whether I have done what I saw. See, when I'm doing now entertainment, nothing will show up here anymore. So meaning all my entertainment has been recoded to office expense. And then let's say I will check now, I will verify whether it's already been reclassified. Yes, so all the transactions has been reclassified. This was the transaction earlier. It was entertainment before. Now it's office expenses. Here, the buried brew is office expenses now. Here, PC complete is already office now. And then, yeah, here also, right? Now, if you look at the source transaction, it's already office expense. Now, we did this without going to each of the transaction and editing the source transaction. So for me, this saves a lot of time if you are recoding or reclassifying accounts. Let's do another example. So we are now in office, right? But I want to filter this based on the date only between July 1 to August. So I search that. So all the transaction that will show it to me only is July, right? Otherwise, it will show all the dates. So I wanted to filter by date. And normally, this is a good combination for you, the date and the other type. So I do only at least 2 levels of filtering so that I have a good overview of all the coverage or the scope of what I wanted to change. So here, there's been inconsistency of this tax rate, right? So I said it should all be tax on purchases, not tax exempt. So then what I wanted to do, I want to change this to from tax exempt to tax purchases. Whatever is your tax type, I go to Recode and I select tax code, then select tax on purchases. Then I reclass that already to tax on purchases. Check this one again, and then I search again. I would see now it's all tax. See, it's very convenient to correct now. So you can do as many as conditions as you want. There's really nothing else you can do except that you can search, and then you can bulk recode and edit. Now, in terms of tracking, you can add. Okay. Now, another trick would be also, I will show you other tricks later when we get to that topic. Okay. Now, let's talk about limitations. First limitation again is Final Recode is only available to advisor user access only. Number 2, lock dates. So if you have put lock dates already in the system, in your finance setting, okay, nothing will show up any information before lock date. So if your lock date, for example, is December 31, 2021, 2020, because you have closed the books and it's already audited, when you do a Find Recode, it will only show 2021. Any transaction before December 31, 2020 will not show up in your display. Another is when you're doing a filtering on accounts, you cannot include in your search system accounts. So what are system accounts? Accounts receivable account, accounts payable account, wage payable account, and then the Forex FX accounts that you use, it will not be searched or recoded in your find and recode process. Fixed assets, okay, so you cannot search per fixed asset type, but you can recode the fixed asset account. If it's actually office expenses, but not computer equipment, okay, you can recode computer equipment to office expenses, but you cannot search by fixed asset type. So in Xero, you can set up different asset type. Let's say asset type for office equipment, another asset type for furnitures, or asset type for your intangible assets, depending on how you categorize or classify in types of your fixed asset. You cannot search that, but fixed asset account, you can correct. Manual journals, actually, you can do manual journals now, but there is a limitation as to tax rate, no? So if you want to correct manual journal in terms of their tax rate, you cannot correct that if your tax rate is no tax, no? Your default in manual journal is no tax. I will show you that later, no? That particular limitation. Purchase order and quotes, that cannot be part of your search or filter items, because find and recode applies only to book entries, meaning those that are already posted in your GL. Anything not posted in GL will not be included, so including purchase orders and quotes. But exception to invoices and bills, where you can show draft invoices, draft bills, you can part of your selection. Bank transfer and overpayment, no, this one you cannot recode this. Okay, bank transfers to each of the bank account to another, you cannot search this transaction or make a recode on this. Payroll transaction, no, you cannot. So when you are trying to search wages and then you've entered them as part of your pay run, that cannot be included. Voided transaction is not also included in your search and recoding items. Any line of purchase transact that contain tracked inventory. So if you are searching for bills and then in Xero you're using the inventory module, and then the inventory item that you use are tracked inventory. So there are two types of items in Xero inventory. You have a track and non-track item. So if you're using tracked inventory, you cannot search that as well. So for more information about inventory, watch in our YouTube last year's webinar regarding Xero inventory. And then items, products, the same thing. Okay, you cannot search by product. That's part of your Xero inventory. One at a time in your screen, it can only show up 200 lines. It will filter as, let's say, thousands or 2,000, 3,000, but you can only view them as a regular limitation in Xero, 200 lines per window. So you just have to do next to other transactions. No? And then, of course, you can only recode but not add, except on tracking. So if your tracking is blank, you can add the tracking. Other than that, you cannot add any other information using tracking. Okay? So as an accountant, you would be tempted to recode as bulk, right? If you found out that at year end, you need to reclassify around 5,000 lines, right? And then you said, oh my God, I remember this lecture from the webinar of LiveSync that I can actually do this. You get excited and then bulk, you know, reclassify 5,000. Yes, you can, but it comes with certain risk that some of the transaction may be skipped. So it's still not perfect. So what I would suggest is, if when you're doing this, group them by dates in group of numbers. So let's say you would want to reclass first 1,000. That's how I do it. So let's say I have 5,000 lines to recode. I would recode, let's say 500, or if I'm too excited, I just until 900, but never 1,000. So I reclass per 1,000, I reclass 500, and I do that, I filter that by date so that I get the exact number. Or I will just select 200 at a time and then do find recode until I complete the entire 5,000. Because if you're putting all 5,000 all together, while you can do that, 100% an error will show up, and then 100% there will be items that will be skipped. Okay, and then the waiting period is also very long. So I do not recommend very bulk. If you do very bulk, I suggest 200 or 500 at a time. Recording tax manual journal tax, should it be this one I need to explain to you. If I go to manual journal, many people do not know, the people using Xero, right, that when you are creating a journal, your tax type by default is locked. If you select a no tax here, right? So if it is a no tax, by default, this journal is locked to whatever tax rate that you will use. Right? So the system will suggest automatically based on your chart of accounts as default tax rate, but you cannot edit that anymore. Right? You cannot edit. But the trick is you just have to select either tax inclusive or exclusive so that that can be editable. Okay, so the same is true. So if your manual journal is on no tax default, when you do a find and recode, that will not change. Okay, so you have to make sure when every time you're creating a journal, make sure it should not be a no tax transaction. No? It should be either tax inclusive. So even if it's a no VAT, still just select exclusive or inclusive so that by the time you do a find and recode, you can actually correct that, change that in the find recode. Otherwise, if it is no tax, that's why when you try to do a find and recode using manual journal, the error will show up saying that you cannot recode the manual journal tax. It's because your manual journal is locked using the no tax. Okay, so next is multiple level of filter may not work. So like I said earlier, you can have as many filtering conditions, but I suggest you do filtering maximum of 3. Search of archived contacts. No? So if you have archived contacts, you cannot search these contacts that are already archived. Only active contacts can be searched. Okay, tips and notes. One tip I can suggest is that group by date range for volume list to avoid error. Now, this is what I was saying. If you have 5,000 lines, I suggest you group them in a shorter and then let's say by date so that you avoid the error of the bulk recoding. So in some cases when you're doing a find and recode, right? So let's say I'll click this. Now, you notice description, I cannot filter this, right? So what you want really is that I want to see office expenses that has a description text containing laptop, for example. So I will do a Control F and I say laptop. So that's another trick. So then I can emphasize that I will only record anything on this and recode this to computer. So you get to learn that based on experience. So if you're doing this every day, you can have that. So that's a good tip as well. No? Okay. Next would be arrange filter in order of priority. No? So I'm suggesting is what's the priority? Do you want to prioritize by date and then the account? You do that. No? Again, make sure to select whether any or all so that you're filtering all or only any of those conditions that will affect your search. And find and recode changes the individual transaction lines, not the entire transaction lines. But some transaction lines can't be recorded. So what I'm saying here, so for example, you have a supplier bill that contains, let's say, 20 lines, okay? And then if you're finding and that 20 lines composed of different accounts, right? So if you only narrow to one particular account and then you want to change that through find and recode, what would be changed is only that particular search line. The rest of the lines in the supplier bill will not be affected. An associated transaction account cannot be affected by recoding. So you created a prepaid account and then you created an adjustment every month. Okay, so any repeating journals that you created for that related to, let's say you would want to change only the asset account. Now, it will not affect also the other accounts. So another example would be the fixed asset, right? So if in Xero you're using a fixed asset module and then you created depreciation already, but later on you want to find and recode that instead of computer equipment, it should be office equipment, for example, just to change the name, it will not affect the related accumulated depreciation for that transaction and the depreciation entry for that transaction. Okay? Changes in the individual transaction line, search result cannot be exported. Yeah, okay. If you expect that it can be exported, it cannot be exported. Recording transaction will be added to the notes and source transaction. So this one particular thing I would show you. So here I have a bill. When you show notes, okay, so in Xero, you create your transaction trail, right? Now you would know recoded here. You know who would do it, and then you would see what was recorded and pre-recorded items. So that is also communicated in your history, right? So it would be part of your history audit trail of that transaction. Who did the recoding at what time, at what, and then you would want to know what was the recorded transaction before office equipment. You can just click that, and then you would see this was the recorded transaction. Okay. Entertainment before, now it's already office equipment. Right? So you would see that. Nice. I think Xero is the only ones doing this. Bulk recoding may take several minutes to complete. So just, you have to be patient. Just refresh and refresh. That's fine and recode. So if you are an accountant who does a lot of bulk recoding, changing taxes, account contacts, then you do find and recode. It's more efficient for you to do.